All right, so in this session is about lessons learned during the implementation of a given digital preservation project. We wanted to have experiences from several of our users across geographies, across different types of preservation projects, different collections, different material, and the experiences that they have. So in this session, what we are going to have is several representatives from several institutions.
Sorry to interrupt you. Would it be possible for you to put the slides into full screen so that we could?
Oh, sorry.
Yeah. Thank you.
Sorry, I forgot. Okay, so several institutions, as I said. We are going to start with Jessica from the United States Holocaust Museum, then Nathan from the Penn State University, Mark from the Royal Horticultural Society, Huay from Temasek Polytechnic in Singapore, and Driek from University of Amsterdam in the Netherlands. So the things that we discussed when preparing this panel was what typical things would be worth sharing with the community. So which considerations before, during, after, things that you would change, funding, scalability, some of the topics here. What part of and what departments on what roles would be involved, because many institutions have different policies, different approaches. So it's also interesting to have different opinions, different choices. Whether you have a established methodology or the methodology is created as part of the digital preservation project, which type of content you are focusing on, or just getting started and then you proceed with some of the material, and also some general insights on future plans when the initial project is finished. So without further ado, we are going to introduce Jessica from the, as I said, United States Holocaust Memorial Museum. Jessica is a senior advisor in the digital ecosystem. He's been in charge of the museum's digital preservation and part of several groups in the museum. And she will talk about some of the things that they have been using, especially this enormous amount of digital files of this unique collection in the world. So I will invite Jessica to unmute and speak about your experience. Thanks.
Great, thank you, Teo. Just a quick check. You can hear me and see me? Yes?
Yep.
Yep, great, okay. Well, hello, everyone. Greetings from a partially cloudy Washington, D.C. I'm really excited to talk with you about our LibSafe implementation and some of the lessons that we learned along the way. I don't think I'm exaggerating when I say that our preservation repository has fundamentally changed the way that we work with digital materials and the way that we work with each other within the museum. And in order to understand why our preservation repository is so crucial to the museum, you have to understand a bit about the museum itself and about how technology serves its mission. And one of our core missions is to investigate and communicate how and why the Holocaust happened. Central to answering these questions is ensuring that we have as much evidence in perpetuity available to staff, scholars, and the general public. To that end, a lot of what we do is actually digital acquisition, where we collect and digitize another repository's holdings and oftentimes take custody of digital versions for long-term access and preservation. We collect materials from 58 countries around the world. Currently, we have this vast collection of digital documents, oral testimonies with survivors and witnesses, a historical sound collection ranging from radio broadcasts to music to war crime trial recordings, publications, and digitized historical films. So About 6 years ago, I and a small team, including my colleague Rebecca Dillmeyer, who was able to travel and be with you all in Glasgow in person. So I'm going to take a moment and make her stand up and wave to everybody who maybe is in the classroom right now. If you have any questions about our implementation after this session, I'm sure I'm not speaking out of turn when I say that she would be more than happy to answer any of those questions for you. So I and a small team, including Rebecca, were able to begin a process of implementing a preservation system to protect close to a petabyte of digital Holocaust history. So this session is about lessons learned from implementation, and I wanted to share 3 of the key lessons that we learned during this process. So lesson number 1 was you have to build a large, diverse team of experts, and it takes a lot of selling. This is a theme that I've actually heard a few times in some of the virtual sessions during this conference. But even within your own institution, you have to sell and you can't do it alone. So back in 2016 at the museum, we had a deeply entrenched and sometimes adversarial silo between our collecting program area and IT. And we knew that given the size of our collection, we couldn't bootstrap a preservation project. We needed an enterprise level system, and more importantly, we needed enterprise level support, which we got from the LibNova team. Because implementing a preservation system at scale, it's hard and it's expensive. So for us, pretty early on, we acknowledged that we couldn't come up with an open source solution. We didn't have the expertise in-house, so we didn't even try and attempt it. Eventually, we launched a competitive bidding process and selected LibSafe from LibNova. And we thought at that time, after we had agreement, we had the funding, we did the procurement, we had finished selling. But we were wrong. We were very, very wrong. We were not done selling. It was just the start of our journey. I can't understate how much of a challenge educating decision makers within the institution was. We spent about a solid year after the contract was awarded communicating with internal partners in network services, information security, senior level leadership, all to foster buy-in up and down the bureaucracy to build the kind of repository that we wanted to build. And I must say kudos to the LibNova team because they were a massive help in building partnerships with our IT team. They even helped get our CIO at the time so brainwashed in the ways of digital preservation that he represented the museum one year at iPres, which I understand is pretty unheard of. But just a key lesson is the selling never stops. We're actually entering this new period of selling the program with some staff turnover and some staff promotions. And this is something I wish I knew at the beginning, that you're not only signing up to steward the digital content, but you're signing up in order to advocate continuously and rigorously within your institution for the environment and the staff that you need in order to protect your digital collections. So lesson number 2 is you need to stay flexible and patient. Like I said, our implementation suffered and is suffering from some staff turnover, a lot of surprises along the way. During implementation, we replaced our project manager, our CIO, a network engineer, and it takes time to orient new staff to the intricacies of a preservation system. Additionally, it will take much, much, much longer than you think to migrate all of your content. In our original project plan, we estimated we could migrate all of our backlog content in about 18 months. And we were incredibly naive about the time and effort it would take to migrate our massive file store of hundreds of terabytes of data. We underestimated not only the logistics of copying and verifying batches of digital content, but the actual time it takes to just ingest a collection and the additional time to troubleshoot problem collections and resolve issues. And finally, the last lesson I want to leave you with that we learned is that you are stress testing everything. I went into this implementation thinking we were deploying a system for preservation and testing our preservation plans, but we ended up stress testing everything: our internal communication, our network connectivity, our information security policies, our government structures, and most importantly, the resolve of our institutional partnerships. Deploying an enterprise preservation system with IT is kind of like going to IKEA with your partner. If you can survive it without killing each other, you're going to have a stronger relationship at the end of it. So we came out on the other end with deep respect and trust for the expertise of our colleagues at the museum, as well as LibNova for their expertise. So those are some of the key lessons we learned. Thank you so much for having me. And I'm really excited to hear about the key lessons from my fellow LibSafe users. Thanks, Teo.
Thank you, Jessica. Thanks for your insights. Now we are moving to Penn State University. We have here, and I'm going to share the chair with Nathan. He's the first digital preservation librarian in the institution. He's been doing a lot of things in the past. He's a name well recognized in this area, and he's managing a project with handling 250 terabytes of data. That includes born analog and born digital material collections in the university of all different kinds. He's been using and he's been developing a lot of things, I know for sure. So Nathan, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Teo. At Penn State University Libraries, there we go. We have 34 libraries across 24 locations. We manage 250 plus terabytes of digital content spread over 150 plus digital collections comprising over 14.5 million files. We've been digitizing collections since 1992 and up until now have never had a preservation repository. Penn State is running a 3-year pilot of LibSafe Advanced, and we are currently in the first quarter of the second year. Before selecting a preservation repository or system, consider building a broad-based coalition of support within your organization, involving all stakeholder roles. Identify champions who can help advocate for resources, but also get buy-in from others. It was helpful to use our digital preservation policy and program plan creation as an engagement hook. 8 departments and over 40 stakeholders were involved, anyone who has a hand in managing digital content. It can be tempting to find small wins and try to build from there, but it pays to lay the groundwork for a broad coalition of support. For us, this was also important for securing long-term funding. Stakeholders became interested with our policy and program plan, and we also created a related priority list of projects. Over the next few years, we made incremental progress on many priorities, except a repository. We engaged stakeholders throughout, and also socialized the significant resource needs with stakeholders and administration. By the time we were looking into piloting a digital preservation repository, the support was virtually automatic. People got it, including administrators, and we were able to establish permanent funding for digital preservation. Selection is often a main stumbling block long before you begin to implement or choose a preservation repository. Engage stakeholders in how digital content will be appraised and selected for long-term digital preservation. Don't assume all content needs to be preserved at the same level. Define levels of preservation commitment for your organization. Preserving everything is not always sustainable. At Penn State, our digital preservation policy establishes 4 levels of digital preservation commitment: no preservation, bit-level preservation, logical preservation, and object preservation. This allows content experts to right-size preservation to the content needs. We do not need to preserve everything the same way. This is one way that helps to keep our program sustainable over time. We establish selection criteria, guidelines, and a rubric for making these decisions and talk about it at every opportunity. The preservationist is not the subject matter. Curators need to make these decisions. All of this has been wrapped up in a selection tool that guides creators through this process and outputs a recommended level of digital preservation commitment with an estimated storage cost if they provided a disk estimate. Plan for long-term sustainability, scalability, and how you configure your preservation repository. Try to implement it in a way that allows you to automate 80% of your content workflows so you can spend your time on that 20%. Penn State has configured our repository by levels of digital preservation commitment. We established the macro scale structures and are now using it in machine actionable ways to ingest our content. In our LibSafe Advanced repository, it's the level of digital preservation commitment that determines the preservation activity. Within those levels, we will deal with format conversions, but we don't base preservation on formats alone. To us, this seems like an unsustainable trap, and we prefer to use the appraised values as the main driver of preservation activity. Try to avoid establishing strict timelines. They will invariably slip, but do set high-level goals and overall plan. There are a lot of steps in implementing a preservation repository, especially if you add many custom plugins. It'll take time to do right. Discuss these goals and plans with your developers or vendor before implementation begins to ensure everyone is on the same page and working together. Identify roles and responsibilities and hold people accountable. As time goes on, goals and plans will need to adjust. It will take longer than you think. Be flexible, but also document your decisions so your future self and your future colleagues can make sense of things. Well in the weeds on a project, it can be hard to measure success. Before you begin anything, establish assessment metrics that can help guide your decision-making. Be data-informed, but not purely data-driven. Not everything can be easily measured. As Penn State progresses with our 3-year pilot, we'll use the assessment metrics established in our internal proposal to evaluate success, and this will inform our adoption decision post-pilot. But don't forget to make sure your metadata allows you to measure those metrics. We only belatedly realized our metadata schema needed additional fields to do this, just as we entered production status for Level 1 digital preservation commitment. Thank you.
Thank you, Nathan. As you see, we are taking advantage of the on-site location as well. Okay. The next in our list of contributors to the meeting is Mark from Royal Horticultural Society. They have a unique collection, and he's going to talk about that. This is a local UK institution, well known, long history, more than 100 years. So you see that the part of the purpose of the society is to preserve all the things from the past. Mark is the coordinator of the current digitation program, and he's been doing a lot of activities around preservation in the last 20 years. He's going to talk us about the specifics of the current project, which has two different steps. One is the library, and the other one is the herbarium, a unique collection in the world. So, Mark.
Hi, everyone. So just to give a bit of background, the Royal Horticultural Society is the UK's largest garden charity, and it's over 200 years old. Its main functions are essentially running its gardens and giving horticultural advice. So the library and the herbarium, its heritage collections, are quite a small part of a larger organisation. And I think really from our perspective, this is about lessons learned in terms of a relatively small heritage collection and how we face the challenges of digitisation and digital preservation. So as Theo said, the Royal Horticultural Society started digitising its heritage collections nearly 20 years ago. The digitised collections comprise, on one hand, the RHS herbarium, which has got over 80,000 digitised specimens. And then from the RHS Linley Library, which is based in London, we have a further around 80,000 images from a wide variety of materials, including early books, botanical artworks, manuscripts, photographs, objects, and the RHS's own corporate archive. Our digitised collections have expanded recently over past years thanks to funding from the UK's Heritage Lottery Fund. A key proviso of the funding is that we share our collections on an open access platform under a Creative Commons non-commercial licence. Now, one of the sort of key outputs to begin with, I think, with our digitisation programme has been a huge increase in the volumes of material digitised, and as a result, a crisis in terms of storage, which is why we were looking for a digital preservation system. Digital preservation was one element of a wider project to make the collections accessible, and this project funding supported a host of activities, including research to identify the key collections for digitisation, the conservation required before digitisation, digitisation itself, the cataloguing, rights clearance, and then of course digital preservation. The scope of the project has initially necessarily involved colleagues from across the organisation, and these include project managers from our digital and technology teams, and then curators from the horticultural information team who handle the sort of scientific plant names, And of course, the managers, curators, cataloguers, and photographers across the herbarium and library teams. And to give a bit of context of the scope, the library team consists of about 20 staff. The herbarium is about the same sort of number of staff, 20 staff. Our progress has often been slowed by the logistics of getting colleagues together to discuss the projects, a challenge made difficult by the fact that the teams are spread across 2 geographic locations, and that's been further exacerbated by COVID. Added to this has been the competing demands of many of our colleagues' time, which has slowed us down. But in one respect, however, our slow progress has been a benefit in light of another significant challenge that we have faced, and that is how to accommodate disparate and complex metadata schema within one preservation system. So we've had 4 different metadata schemas to consider. One for the herbarium specimens, which are catalogued in Brahms, one for library items, which are catalogued in Circe-Dynix, and then another from the library's archival collections, which are currently catalogued in Axial Calm. And then lastly, we have a set of legacy metadata from an old digital asset management system, which is based on the old IPTC metadata standard. Now, developing a single common metadata schema in LibSafe that can accommodate all of our varied collections has been a long and intricate process, requiring liaison between curators, cataloguers, managers, and systems librarians. It's been a valuable and important lesson for this process of trying to unravel and create a uniform set of metadata fields. Another key lesson learned is the importance of having good quality catalogue records, clean, consistent, adhering to recognised standards. Like many similar organisations, our catalogues and collections have grown organically over a number of years, and as a result of numerous projects, they've passed through the hands of many past and present colleagues. The quality of many old records varies widely. Keywords are not aligned to any particular thesaurus, authority is not being used to any great extent, and information related to custodial, administrative, histories, and copyright has often been lacking. The result was that when we started the project a year and a half ago or so, most of the records are not in a state to yet be imported into the preservation system or to be shared on any open access platform. So to that end, we've undertaken a wide-ranging review of our catalogue records. For the library, we've had to implement a new style guide based on ISAG guidelines. The herbarium records and images have been modified to adhere to GDPR requirements, and our rights clearance officer is working to determine the copyright status of many records. With the lessons we have learned and the progress we have made, we are step by step getting closer to our vision of having the digital collections preserved and made available on a platform where we can share our treasures. Moreover, the bringing together of herbarium and library collections into a single repository for the first time and an open access platform has opened up new opportunities in how we can present and interpret our collections. So just a single example, if we include new fields in LibSafe that allow us to capture the scientific plant names, which we can then use as a facet filter across all of our collection types on an open access platform. Future users will be able to search for a particular plant and find results across the herbarium, library, and art collections. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. As you notice, we have several experiences, several things completely different, but the main goal is preserving the information. Okay, we are moving next one to Temasek Polytechnic in Singapore, and we have Huay with us. Huay, as she always mentions, has been running 2 digital preservation project implementation and lives to tell the tale. So this is also quite interesting in how you survive a digital preservation project. As Huay is cross-functional, she has responsibilities about several areas in Temasek, and she is a bridge that connects different areas and different departments in the Polytechnic. So she's going to speak to us about the experience also in this case migrating from some older technologies or different technologies into one single repository for all academic and other information, the history of the Polytechnic. So Huay, if you are ready, I'll pass the floor to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Theo. Just a quick check. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, perfect.
Theo, is that all right? Can you hear all right?
Yes, yes. Go on.
Okay, that's great. Thank you so much. Thanks for the introduction, Teo. Hello, everyone. I'm Huay from Temasek. It is 10 p.m. Singapore time, so all is dark outside. Just a quick background about Temasek. Temasek Polytechnic is a young and vibrant institution. We just celebrated our 30th birthday in 2020. Our students are around 17 to 19 years old, and we have 6 academic schools from applied science, design to IT and informatics. So the library is the custodian of the Temasek memories and archives. I think this is by virtue of our skill set as librarians in organizing different contents, knowledge in metadata description, and expertise in providing information access to our end users. Our TP or Temasek collection comprises of publications, photographs, as well as videos about Temasek, our campus, as well as the people and shared memories. There are a few driving forces for this call for a digital preservation tender that was sometime in late 2021. The key factors was to align with Temasek's strategic direction to be a digital campus and to move our collection and services to cloud. So to prepare for this tender, we formed a project working committee comprising staff, team from the library, as well as our IT services department. And because we have some experience in using digital preservation system, we were able to identify our core requirements and the new features that we wish to have in the new service. So for instance, we are very certain that the system have to be a cloud-based software as a service that is scalable. Secondly, it must be mobile responsive to provide positive end user experience. Thirdly, it should support full text search to improve content discoverability. And from the archive staff perspective, we need to have productivity workflows that can support the ingestion of large video files. And finally, the new system must have web crawling feature to allow us to harvest online content. So currently, Temasek is using LibNova's LibSafe digital preservation system and the open access services. LibSafe is used by the archives staff to ingest and preserve our digital objects, while open access platform provides our Temasek staff and students the ease of access to our archives collection online. So as for the lessons learned from the project, I have initially summarized a few points to share with you, but I realized that we have some commonality with the presenters before us. So I think I'm down to maybe 2 or 3 points of lessons learned to share with you. So similar to our presenters before, I think having sufficient project implementation time is important, and the continual advocacy doesn't stop. Once your tender is closed, it continues, it went on and on. And then of course, the third point is having good communication within the project working committee is vital. The third learning point would be, I feel, is to refrain from prescribing requirements based on our existing work processes. Choose instead to articulate the end in mind and work very closely with the vendor so as to fully tap on the built-in features available. So we were quite thankful that, through the process, we worked very closely with LibNova, who has been listening to us, understanding our requirements and trying to work things around to make it productive and efficient in terms of our processes. And lastly, the other learning point we have is to have change management in place to communicate regularly with the archive staff team, encouraging them to be flexible and to be open to review their current work processes, as well as how the end users will be accessing our new archives services online. So with this, thank you so much for your attention. I'll pass the baton back to Teo. Thanks, Teo.
So many thanks, Muy, for your insights. Again, as you can see, different experiences, different institutions, different approaches, all coming together into the common purpose of digital preservation. And our last speaker is going to be Driek from the Universiteit van Amsterdam. And he's been project manager of the library of the university and leader of the Digital Depot project. The project ran the European Tender for Preservation depots in digital collections, libraries, archives, and museum collections, and the subsequent implementation using LibNova's product. This digital depot is in production since recently. And again, in this case, we need to prepare connectivity and synchronization with some external tools like Archive Space and Gubi in this case. In the near future, and we are participating also with the Universiteit, they will increase the number of collections and the content that is going to be ingested into LibSafe. So Driek, if you can join, thanks.
I'm here. Thank you, Theo. Sorry, I muted just to let you not share a cough like many others. Hello, everyone. Thanks, Theo, for your time. Thanks. I'll keep this very brief. I think I'll just drop a few things after what I've heard from my colleagues. University of Amsterdam Library, and then again, our Rare Collections Department is relatively small. We are also, compared to others, we found very complex. We have both library, museum, and archive type of collections. And as we found out, those three are very much not alike each other. So my first advice would be, do not be us and focus as an institution on doing one thing right. But that's where we are. We had a trajectory rather similar to many of the previous speakers. We got our stakeholders online, our central ICT department. Well, as a project manager, I've implemented many other systems, so I know which people to contact. That was all very well embedded. Security was aboard, the director was aboard. So actually the whole umfeld was ready, but then where we really found well, our lessons learned, so to say, we're still in the middle, we are in production, but we are way behind the schedule of ingesting our current archives, is that it exposes weaknesses in processes, in staff competence, in management competence, as well as in the ICT architecture. As Theo mentioned, yes, we are LibNova, LibSafe is dropped in the middle of an architecture that's already existing, and we have an architecture with separate backends and front ends. LibSafe is very much also a backend. It's designed to be that way. It's a perfect fit. When we're establishing these links, the integration with Gubi, integration with Archive Space, etc., and also some custom built front ends that were still using XTF and the LXS software, so open source software from the digital library community. It exposes all the weaknesses. It exposes that things may be working as may seem to be separate front and back ends, but they're not in practice. Things are not documented as well. Working processes are not documented as well. I think want to highlight one thing especially. We have a small team that's dedicated to archiving, handling archives. And they all are very much skilled in the physical archive handling. And they do digital as an aside. And we are finding this is not working. So we really need to hire extra staff, which will happen soon. We actually had a hire which turned out to be someone who was still too seeped in the traditional handling of physical archives. And although it's a great person, which we had used, well, we had hired her for in another project. only great experiences. It didn't land. So it's a very different skill set. You need digital skills. You also still need like the heart of someone who's dealing with heritage material. Like you need like almost like a curator. These people are very, very hard to find. So it exposed weaknesses in our architecture. It exposed weaknesses in our current staff competences, in our management processes, in our workflow processes. And we were warned by colleagues from all kinds of institutions, which we consulted before starting on the project and before starting the tender. The processes are twice the work of everything else. It's true. But even taking that into account, it's still twice as much. This is like Hofstadter's law. Our complexity, yeah, we're finding it scales logarithmic. So do one simple pilot with one collection of one type linked to one front end. It's doable, but 2 pilots or 3 pilots, and it became incredibly difficult to manage. I just thought I'd highlight a few things, so I'm much less structured than my esteemed colleagues before me. But we are a small institution. We're very, very willing to share our experiences. So if you would like to know more about implementing a serious workflow process in an institution that is not used to it, feel free to contact me. And I'm very helpful with especially Theo's advice, who has been warning me. And it's nice that a vendor actually helps you with the non-technical stuff of things, because they've seen it before. As I said, we were warned. And still, it's this is not an easy thing. I think that's about for my notes. So let's leave it to Q&A. Thank you, Theo.
Thank you, Driek. Thank you, everyone, for their contributions. We were, since you noticed, a lot of testimonials, direct testimonials from people involved in different stages of digital preservation project. So we really don't have actually time for proper Q&A. So I would invite the members of the audience, if they have additional requests of information from either of the from the participants in the panel, you have the information, the address information, so you can contact or contact myself, and I will be happy to forward whatever question is available. With this, James, I'll pass it back to you, because we are close to the final minute in the allocated times. So thanks a lot for your participation.
Thank you so much, Theo, and thanks everyone. That brings us to the end of this session, but please do continue this conversation on Twitter, reach out to the presenters, and yeah, look forward to seeing you in the other sessions. Bye for now.